we're going to start our webinar on managing children's nutrition. I have the pleasure today of introducing Stephanie Springel and Cheyenne Richards, and I will be your moderator. We're hoping to get this done in about 30 to 40 minutes. Please keep your phones on mute, and you will be muted actually by our facilitator. And should you have any questions, there is a Zoom chat bar, so please feel free to type in any questions that you may have for our panelists. Let's start with Stephanie Springel. Stephanie Springel's been in the business for over a decade, a true ambassador for children's nutrition. She and her company have served hundreds of thousands of meals to kids from private, charter, and independently owned schools. And Stephanie does one thing best, and that is present children's nutrition. She can walk into a school, make a presentation, and then they are in a quick hurry to sign her up to provide meals. And we thought there's no better person than to talk about the mechanics of children's nutrition than Stephanie, and we're happy to have her. Welcome. Our second panelist is Cheyenne Richards. Her reputation precedes her. You can Google children's nutrition and you will find Cheyenne. Cheyenne's a registered dietitian with a bachelor's degree from the University of Oklahoma and an MBA from Austin, Texas, a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the International Association of Eating Orders. Leads a company called Nutrition Rights, and I urge you after this call to find Stephanie and to follow her. I am Philip DeSouza, and I had a company called hotlunch.com. We started this as a hobby almost 20 years ago and have evolved into ambassadors for children's nutrition. The software that we have helps parents and school administrators and managers to know better in terms of how to deliver children's nutrition. On an aside, some of our proceeds go to support children in underprivileged, girls especially in underprivileged countries. So do look up net.org to see some of the things that we do. With that, we're going to talk a little bit about today's topic. So we thought, given the fact that there's hundreds of signups today, and that we've got, most of you on this webinar from North America, some international guests as well, there is no a captive audience, and we did a quick test to see what the reaction be, and we found a tremendous response to the topic. So ladies and gentlemen, there's food service providers here on the call today. We've got administrators from schools as well, and we've got parents. So it's a mixed audience, and we thought it would be a great idea to walk through on managing school nutrition and to look at the various elements on the school nutrition landscape. So we'll talk about what's good and what's working, what are some of the warning signs, and then we'll have our panelists provide some resources that we think will help you in the quest for managing children's nutrition and the roles that you play. So with that, I'm going to get started. We've got our first question, and Stephanie, this is to you. What are the top 3 things that children's nutrition? And Stephanie, if you can please unmute your mic.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, Philip. I appreciate that. The top 3 things when addressing children's nutrition. The first and most important one is obviously, will they eat and enjoy it? And that is definitely the biggest obstacle when being a lunch provider. We are not doing our jobs. I feel we're not doing our jobs with hungry kids and a bunch of food in the trash. So it's finding that that sweet spot of what will they eat. We could provide them tofu bowls all day long, and call it healthy, and it'll end up in the trash. So I feel we're not doing our job then. Is the meal prepared in the healthiest way possible? We, at my company, we don't fry anything. We don't have a fryer in our commissary kitchen at all. Many things can be baked to get the same consistency, and children will still enjoy them. Removing or selecting items that are have no high fructose corn syrups in them, no nitrates or preservatives, and making as much as you can from scratch, which can be a challenge as a lunch provider. And does the program meet the needs of the schools and their kids? By that, I mean with each school, there are different demographics. So you really have to look at who you're serving, what the needs are of the school and their children from not only a food perspective, but from also a cost perspective, and making sure that you're able to provide the healthiest meals based on their needs.
Thank you. Tofu balls and broccoli, there is a memory, and you're right. I mean, in this day and time, and in this moment, it's pretty important to stay on health. Cheyenne, over to you. What are the top 3 things that you look at as a dietitian and nutritionist when looking at addressing children's nutrition needs?
Well, the top 3 things really are children getting nutritious foods in adequate amounts. And that's a pretty broad sort of subject. So I'll slowly, as kind of we go out throughout the presentation, really round out what that looks like, especially on the next slide. The second thing is established meal times, which really aid in helping create balanced plates, getting in a variety of different food groups, and ensuring that children actually sort of sit down and get that opportunity to eat in a non-distracted environment. The other thing I put on here is point number 3, which is calorie needs. So adequate amounts, when we talk about that, it really varies based on a child's genetics, what their pediatric growth charts have looked like historically, and their physical activity level. So if, I think is the next slide, I believe, the plate. Okay, good. So if we could go to that, it'll help me cover a lot of the points in number 2.
And that's what we have up now, Cheyenne.
Okay, perfect. There must be a little delay. So when establishing a balanced plate, we really talk about just keeping it simple. So ensuring that we get a variety of foods, meaning protein, complex carbohydrates would just mean that they have fiber, and then produce. And there are so many different benefits to creating a plate like this in terms of increasing satisfaction, even just from a visual standpoint. So how a food is presented, especially, I'm sure Stephanie can talk to this, how it's presented can really affect how much intake a child or any person really will achieve. So it sort of plating like this really helps with intake, and then also it aids in digestion. So each of these macronutrients are digested at a different rate using different digestive enzymes. So using them all really aids in satisfaction, feelings of fullness, and making sure that kids get enough energy to complete the day. And, you know, here in the previous point on number 2, we really talked about those established meal times in creating, and this concept of good versus bad foods. And so when we look at nutrition from a more simplified standpoint, where we're aiming to get at least 2 food groups, what that does is when we offer the variety, often it really minimizes this concept of good or bad foods. So what we're talking about is we want parents and even school administrators to know that what it means to eat healthy is we're really talking about an eating pattern over a period of time. So there's not just one meal or just one item that determines health. It's the progression of meals over time. So a really simple way I like to describe this is kind of like thinking about it in terms of an 80-20 rule. So if 80% of the time we're eating fairly healthy and 20% of the time we have what we would call treats, that would still be considered eating healthy over time. So if you think about it in terms of math, I'm going to have you all follow me for 2 seconds. So if I'm a person who eats 3 meals a day and 2 snacks, that's 5 meals a day. At 7 days a week is 35 meals. Well, 20% of that is 7. So I could have technically 7 sort of treats or items that aren't exactly like tofu or broccoli, and I'm still considered having a healthy eating pattern over time. So I kind of love this concept of keeping it simple, but making sure the different components are there. And that's really how we kind of get in all of these complex topics that Stephanie and I are talking about.
Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be providing you a copy of this presentation recording, as well as a compilation of all the links. A matter of housekeeping, Cheyenne is in Charleston, South Carolina, and in the middle of a thunderstorm, so please excuse the slight lag, and it's Murphy's Law at work, right? Just when we are in the middle of a webinar. So thank you for, the stiff upper lip and getting this done. Now, I really like the idea of the plate, and then as we move on to question 2 and we come to you, Cheyenne, let's talk about, the plate juxtapositioned against the food pyramid, and, which one's right and what do we do and how things are going. So thank you for the top 3. Back to you, Stephanie, on question number 2. So, we've got a fair idea of what we've got to do. What are the top 3 things to consider? And I'm sure there are more than 3. And in the interest of time, we've limited it to the top 3. Our guest today can reach out to you should they have questions or comments or concerns. Once we know what's right and we know where we need to go, the next thing is how do we form the plan, and how do we know that we're going to stay on track? Whether we're a parent or a manager at school or a food service provider, how do you administer, manage, and monitor healthy eating?
Okay. Well, plan menu according to what kids are eating. Through hotlunch.com, which I'm not getting paid to say that, by the way. I think it's an amazing software program. I've worked with several, so I just really have to give a shout out to these guys who work tirelessly to help me they help me make my job so much easier, so thank you. But through the site, I follow trends and sales, and I revise menus accordingly. So if I'm putting things on the menu that are not going well, I have to be open to change. Even though I may think it's a great entree, if the kids aren't eating it, again, I'm not doing my job. Offer kid favorite foods as well as new, more adventurous items. This is really important to encourage kids to try different food items. Oftentimes they're offered things at home and they've become accustomed to certain things at home. And I've found even in my own home, when I make a new dish, one of my kids will look at it and not even be willing to try it. So always putting adventurous, different items on a menu really helps with that. And then provide a menu with options. My sweet spot as far as menu offerings and menu planning goes, I found that 5 different entree choices is a good amount. It's manageable internally from a lunch provider perspective, at least for our commissary kitchen. Anything more than that, it's just too much. And we run into waste and other things. And also within those 5 items, I'm always including things for our picky eaters, which I talk about a little bit later in this presentation. And I always joke that if a child can't find something on my menu that they will eat, then they definitely are in the space of, I still want my mom to make a heart-shaped turkey and cheese sandwich, period. End of discussion. And that's okay too. Hopefully within a year or 2, they'll be back on board and ready to try some other things and stick at the sandwich.
Excellent. Thank you very much. 5 menu choices a day, 5 days a week, 200 days in a year couldn't be easy, and you do a job well done there, as is evident from the success of your company. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a typical case of theory versus practice, and we switch this around. We should have come to how Stephanie practices, what Cheyenne preaches when it comes to administering, managing, and monitoring healthy eating. But in this case, we did it a little backwards. So Cheyenne, on to you. How do you prescribe administering, managing, and monitoring healthy eating you see your patients daily. Tell us a little more.
So I think this is a great segue because what Stephanie does is she actually provides this experience that I'm talking about in point number 1, where kids are provided a meal, parents provide it, and then it's the child's job to choose what to eat from that meal. And so sort of talking a little bit more about what Stephanie was talking about offering new and different things, even just the child seeing that and experiencing it is something we consider an exposure. So even though they taste it or eat all of it, it is still a really great thing. So just providing it, putting it in front of the child is one way that we help administer and manage this. The other thing is sort of what we talked about establishing mealtime routines. So this really helps limit the barrier to proper intake the same way as it does by turning off the TV and making sure that there's nothing really hugely distracting at the kitchen table. Some other points on here, basic table etiquette and being a role model. So they kind of roll into one. Kids do what they see. So one way to really manage intake is for the family to all eat very similar things. That's another really good thing about being at school is there may be 5 options, but they're all the same 5 options presented to everybody. So that's really great. And then the last point is, thinking about developing a healthy outlook. And I think all the points preceding this fall into this as well, but just some other very pointed things, not offering food as rewards, not banning certain foods, which we kind of talked about in the first sort of set of questions. There are really no good or bad foods. It's really how they're put in here. So I think this is really great. We're talking about offering a variety again and ensuring kids sort of get exposure to different nutrients.
And while we were doing our dress rehearsals, you talked about the 16 points of touch, right? And I figure you'll come to that a little later in your presentation. That was an interesting concept.
Because we're sort of talking about that variety and offering things that aren't necessarily always given at home. There's a lot of different research about taste preferences. And there was one study that I read that said you can offer, or it may take up to 16 presentations of an item, let's say green peas, before a preference is actually developed or basically established from that. So that's a great point.
Thank you very much. And by the way, Cheyenne, we now know what a thunderstorm in South Carolina sounds like. So moving on to our customers, ladies, the child, right? That's why we're here. Question 3 is focused on our customer. What to look for when ordering children's meals, be it at restaurants, at school, at home, in this day and time using Instacart or DoorDash. So Stephanie, I'll pitch this over to you first.
Okay. Obviously the healthfulness of meals offered, but again, not too healthy. We want to make sure that they're going to be eating the food. I used the example of a tofu bowl. I could use so many other examples, but I think you get the point from that meal. Variety of meals offered. From a lunch provider perspective, this is for both parents and the children. And what I mean by that is, although we're not feeding the parents, typically they are the ones that are placing the orders for the children. And I find that if you don't have a variety of meals on your menus, you get the complaint that you offer the same thing every day. You offer the same thing every day, which is definitely not the case. But if they're seeing the same thing, so throwing in a variety, for example, chicken korma, we put that on the menu. And although we didn't get that many orders, it was an amazing dish. Hopefully next time we will. And that goes back to following your trends. How much was it ordered? And I like to offer a little side note on this. I like to offer new adventurous different meals, like chicken korma, for example, Mediterranean bowl, at least 3 times to see where if it's getting any traction, if sales are starting to go up. And even if it's a little, even if it's only makes up about 1 to 2% of my overall sales, to me, that's a success. If I see even just a tiny jump the next time. And then, of course, kid-friendly options. We all know that kids have their favorite foods. And again, it's going back to making those kid-friendly foods as healthy as possible. Chicken tenders, bake them, don't fry them. Macaroni and cheese, make it from scratch, not out of a box. And this comes again from a lunch provider perspective. So then that's what we stand behind. So
I'm going to ask you a question that I've seen just now coming across, and it's timely because of the topic that we're on at the moment. Trends, right? You talked about trends. I know at one point, or probably still, kids go through this phase of, putting fries into the middle of the sandwich, and I'm sure there's a teen hashtag or a name for it. And then there's this whole to-do about the chicken sandwich. At least here in Los Angeles, there are long lines to find the perfect chicken sandwich. Are you seeing trends? Can you comment on any trends that you see?
The one thing that even over, this is what will be our 10th year, 11th year, 10th year, I can't remember. But anyway, kid favorite foods, hamburgers, pizza, macaroni and cheese, chicken tenders. These are all things that just the kids still want them. So it's just interesting. So my goal is to try to break those trends a little bit, but there are some kids, especially your picky eaters, they'll always go back to what they know that they like. And it's really important. A side note on this is that the quality and consistency of the meal you provide on January 15th should be exactly the same on March 15th. And that's super important for kids. Once they find something that they like, they want it to be the same every time. And I have so many examples where we weren't able to get one pasta in, and we brought in another pasta, and I will get at least 3 phone calls. And I can't tell the difference, but the kids can. So that's really important. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Cheyenne, over to you. As a nutritionist and a popular and leading one, please dispel any images or thoughts that your family eats broccoli all day. And let's talk a little bit about the same question. Is it healthy and is it good for you? Can we do both? What do we look for when ordering children's meals?
Right. So my most favorite thing to point out about this topic is basically frequency. So if you're finding that it's very manageable for your family to be able to make most dinners at home, if you like to grill out on the weekends when the weather's nice and you're really eating out infrequently, we really say that from a parent-child perspective, there's less monitoring. So getting something that's unusual or that you wouldn't normally get would be okay. That would be great. We do that at my house, and my children get to, order milkshakes or fries or whatever it is. There's nothing, wrong with that. If we were counting on or really needing a lot of help from outside food, sources, or we needed stuff to go more often, then we really talk about definitely from a parent's perspective, nutrition education, and then also passing on nutrition education to the children so that when they are independent or they are at school choosing options, then they're choosing things that are more balanced and help us really create this healthy eating pattern over time that we were talking about. So it's really, for me, about frequency and really, kind of keeping it that simple. The other couple of points I have on here is that it's okay to consider the whole menu. And I think there are those favorites that Stephanie has talked about on the menu, which I think is awesome. Moms can't always, and parents can't always make those things at home. So, it's great that those favorites are available, but considering the whole menu really provides a whole breadth of options, which is great. And then substitutions are okay. So I think that in the day and age that we're in now, the day and age that we're in now, it is considered okay etiquette to request substitutions.
Excellent. And that thunderstorm has been recorded for posterity. Thank you very much, Cheyenne. So we've done everything right. We've conceived a good plan. We've made sure that we're administering this thoroughly. We've talked to our children, we know what the landscape looks like. And now on an ongoing basis, this question is geared towards how do we know, what are the milestones along the way on the path to good, healthy eating that things are going well? And we're going to mix things up a little bit and pitch this over to Cheyenne first.
So definitely I would emphasize that pediatric visits are a wonderful place to start. And I think they are appropriately really emphasized. Of all the things that really gets covered across this country, the pediatric visits, I think, are one that's really well promoted. So really at these visits, being an advocate for yourself and your copies of growth charts is a really great place to start. Those are things that can help you understand sort of how your child is progressing growth-wise. And what we want to see is sort of a slow upward trend, or, and maybe it's different for every child, but an upward trend, or even it looks like it's not necessarily a plateau, but what we don't want to see is sort of anything, a decline trajectory on any type of those pediatric growth charts. So that the pediatric visits are just really great. The other points are really related to mood and fatigue or energy levels. Those are definitely things that can be byproducts of nutrition deficiencies. The other things, complaints of stomach pains or headaches. So those are, if there are no complaints, that's a really great thing. If children are going to the bathroom regularly, that's also a good sign. And having a healthy appetite, which again, can change as the year sort of progresses. It may get hotter, it may get cooler. We may need more drinks to help sort of, supplement electrolytes and things like that. But these are sort of the main 4 points that I focus on.
Good points. With 2 adult kids, it's been a while since we talked about APGAR scores and looking into the contents of diapers, and I'm sorry about that. I'm hoping no one's eating breakfast at the moment. Stephanie, over to you. How do we know if things are going well?
Well, it's easy, really. If orders increase and there are no complaints. That's pretty straightforward. And happy kids equal happy parents equals a happy lunch provider, and also a happy school. So it's really that simple.
Good. Literally putting your money where your mouth is and eating what you like, and that's your test. And you're right. It couldn't be simpler. Your customer will automatically either gravitate towards something that they really like or reject something that they don't. So you have a rapid response test. Thank you for that. So the next question is for Stephanie. Mm-hmm. We know what to look for. We know what's right. We know how things are going well. What are some of the warning signs if we're off track?
Well, a lower number of orders with no explanation versus obvious reasons like the one we're experiencing right now. Every day, I'm always checking to see what my overall order number is. And I always have a general idea of what it should be or what I want it to be. If there's a decline, I always want to find out why. It's typically a field trip or a party in-house or something that the school's doing outside the norm. Increased number of complaints by kids, parents, or school. That is something that is so important to address immediately. My rule of thumb is if I have an issue at a school and I've received a call from the school saying something may have happened at lunch, which fortunately does not happen a lot. But if it does, I personally will get on the phone and contact that parent before they pick up their child. And I will let them know what happened. I explain the situation. I apologize. I credit their meal. And it typically ends in a very good response and relationship. And that's really relationship building. And obviously lowered revenue from a business perspective. If you're seeing a dip in your revenue and you want to know why, you really have to sit back and, again, go back and follow the trends and figure out where things started to go off. So that's what we do.
you are the early warning system, and then Cheyenne, on to you being a healthcare provider. Warning signs take on a more serious note for you. So can you talk about the warning signs, please?
So we've already touched on the pediatric visits where we can get a lot of this information. Some of these vitamins that I've listed, these are the most common vitamin deficiencies in kids, some of them. And so a lot of these touch on those points from how do we know when things are right? Where mood, that's in here a lot, the fatigue, weakness, those sorts of things. So it's interesting that a lot of the factors are very similar, right? What I like to remind everybody about is that when we're sort of talking about kids, we need to compare one state of mind or one instance to what is normal for that child. So if a child is grumpy when they're awake, it may not be because of a breakfast deficiency. So just sort of comparing mood and level of energy and all of that to what is normal for that child is.
And you have a resource in addition to the ones that you mentioned earlier, which was parents.com. This is the pediatrics at UBC. Help me with that one.
Yep, so this is just kind of, this link here is actually giving a little bit more of explanation on the vitamin deficiencies. A lot of these, again, are very similar. So it's just sort of spelled out a little bit more about what that looks like, where you can get some of the nutrients you need from, to increase these levels. Lucky for us, we do have really, the great thing about schools providing lunches is that they are held to certain standards, and they also work closely with dietitians to make sure that needs are being met. So those are some really good benefits there.
And one of the questions that I saw going past was, can you comment on vitamins? Yes, no, maybe?
So in general, if you're able to instill those regular meal times and you know that your child is getting about the approximate needs of the different food groups, usually children don't need multivitamins. Certainly consult with your pediatrician, but for the most part, it's very specific subgroups that really need vitamins. Women, need prenatal vitamins, usually the elder population, but there should be plenty of opportunities to get all the nutrition that the child needs through the food, and that is actually the preferred source. We want to get all the nutrition through food, because then we know that it's it's from a food source. It's could be plant-based most likely, and kind of we know where the nutrients are coming from.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Moving on to question number 6, and this is a kind of a bonus for our listeners and viewers. Stephanie, talk of some of the resources that you use and are sharing with us today. Okay.
These are ones that I visit regularly for different reasons, which I kind of spelled out. Foodsafety.gov. It's the best resource for food safety procedures as well as nutritional information. We are serving a very vulnerable population. We have to be extremely diligent with food safety procedures. It's critical. We take that very seriously. I always recommend subscribe to the CDC's website to receive food recall notifications. If you're carrying romaine lettuce was an example about a year ago, I think. Making sure you're pulling those from your shelves immediately and communicating to your customers, parents, children, schools, that you are aware of this and that you are replacing, for example, we replace the romaine with another lettuce and communicating that with them. The next one is provides information on changes that impact children's nutritional programs, USDA.gov. And so we obviously frequent that one regularly. And I recently found diabetesfoodhub.org. It's a great recipe for, or a great resource for recipes and menu ideas, especially with there's so many children having diabetes now. Just trying to stay ahead of that as opposed to behind. Twitter is great because you can follow certain links, and then each day, just when you need a break and you want to shift focus a little bit, I love to go in here. These are just some of the ones that I follow: Kids Eat Right, Cool Mom Picks, School Lunch, Super Healthy Kids. It just shows what is trending, fresh ideas. An example is last school year, there was a hashtag Lunch Lady Bar. So we created our own healthy version of a Lunch Lady Bar made with sunflower seed butter. It's delicious. Had some protein in there, no nuts. It was fun. So just trying to stay connected with the social media and what's going on with that too is really important.
Thank you. Valuable leads, and we will pass that on to our audience. And Cheyenne, the same question for you. What can you share in terms of resources?
So I want to point out first that all of the sites and resources Stephanie listed are definitely things that I use myself. So I'm always making sure that I can put out a PSA on the iceberg lettuce or something that I need to my own clients and constituents. I think it's really important. So those are definitely resources I use. Of course, consulting with a dietitian nutritionist, especially if there is a concern about vitamin deficiency, for instance, or food allergies, might be an instance where someone may not be getting what they need. I love the American Heart Association. I think the most comprehensive but concise information sometimes on nutrition can be found at the American Heart Association's website. And then eatright.org is the actual Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics website. So there's a lot of really great things about how to provide adequate hydration in the summer months when it's extra hot. And again, they're very easy to digest articles. I think we're going to provide the link for the Harvard Kids Healthy Eating Plate. It's very similar in terms of.
Okay, so it does look like Cheyenne got hit by a power outage, and fortunately it happened on question 6. We'll wait for her to get back to us. And so Stephanie, let's talk about the next question, which is, and this was more that goes towards, your credibility and your role in the process. So what is your role in administering, managing, and monitoring healthy eating?
So when I create menus, I always include 2 kid favorite items each day, again, out of my 5. So 2 are for those super picky eaters, a pasta marinara, even buttered noodles, which I fought for a very long time, but it's an item that even the real little preschool children enjoy. As well as to include a variety that hits all other dietary restrictions: vegetarian, gluten-free, and vegan. Even something as simple as taking our salads, our entree-sized salads, for example, a chicken Caesar salad, we use only gluten-free croutons. So that's very easy. It's easy to take some of your menu items and convert them into gluten-free offerings. Look at what is selling each month prior to creating the next menu. Again, back to following trends, what's working, what's not, and listening to your clients. And change menus to be seasonal. This allows for variety. I live in Las Vegas, so serving soup, right now actually would be not a good idea. During those months, we'll do bistro boxes or more sandwiches, cold items. We still offer hot lunch, of course, every day in our 5 offerings. We work very closely with a registered dietitian like Cheyenne. You need someone in your camp that you can go to with questions when it comes to children's nutrition. That's not my area of school. That's not what I know a lot about. So lean on people that do have that expertise. Read all labels of all food items that you order, down to pretzels. If they're manufactured in a facility that contains tree nuts, we will not order that. Balance your menu with higher and lower cost items for fixed cost schools. And that's coming from a lunch provider perspective. And what I mean by that is if you are charging the same amount for all 5 entrees that you're offering, make sure you have a balance of more expensive items, referring to food costs here, versus lower costs, so that there's a balance and your food cost isn't going all over the map. And you'll find that it evens out quite perfectly, actually.
Excellent. And, so if Zubair will let me know if Cheyenne joins us, her reputation and her resume speaks for itself. We are going to provide you more information on her role, a link to her website, and hopefully she'll be open to questions. In the interest of time and us approaching the 40-minute allotted time, Stephanie, I have one question that I'm going to combine that came across, and that is related to the present shelter or work at home. How does children's nutrition differ in time of stay at home or safer at home as compared to normal times? And what are some of the potential deficiencies, which might be more of a Cheyenne question, but can you comment on the children's nutrition piece, please?
Yeah, so I've seen there's two different extremes I've seen in this. You have, again, it goes back to the parent. So right now, parents really have a lot of control over what their children are eating. They're seeing them all the time. They're not able to sneak snacks from their friend's lunch. So it's really, what are we bringing into our homes and what's around. So that is, well, I was going to say one other thing. The other extreme, I know what I was going to say, that's concerning, obviously, is our food sensitive or foods insecure children. That obviously is a huge concern, especially when this all happened, when we have a lot of children that get their food from the school system. Fortunately, in Las Vegas, our 3 Square Food Bank has set up, they've done an amazing job setting up pickup locations for children. So our town is doing a very good job at that. Those are the 2 things that I've seen.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, again, this will be in an email to you, and you'll have the recording, all the resources. Just a short pitch for heartlunch.com. If you're interested, we have some offers, email us. And last but not least, a deep and warm thank you to both Stephanie and Cheyenne for doing this today. Thank you to all of you for joining us as we continue on the quest to raise healthy children. And have a good day and stay safe. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.